J.D. McGraw, who's CEO for Ironclad Encryption, and also one of our sponsors. And we'd like to thank him doubly, one for being a sponsor to our program here, and also for the remarks that he's about to give. We have his bio that's set out in your folder, and so we will we'll start as soon as there we go. Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thanks for your time today. I've got a personal thanks to Jeff in the law school. One of the guys on my team is a guy named Dave Staffel, Green Beret. Some years ago was prosecuted for achieving and eliminating a threat 45 minutes early. And because of Jeff in the school, they were able to protect him and his ODA team in going through that. And this school has done a lot for a lot of other military guys around the world that are being charged and prosecuted for the wrong things. But anyway, for that, Jeff, I just thank you for that. Well, between Jeff and Keith and others and Jason have kind of laid out the situation that we find ourselves in. I'm not going to bore you with too many more details, but in one thing, just last week we had a terrorist with a laptop hack into the Wi-Fi on a plane and take control of the plane while it was on ground. Pilot ended up canceling the flight because of the problems that they had with that. One other little thing was, as taxpayers, we lost a $1 billion drone that was jet-powered, that was stealth. The Iranians were able to hack into it. You can go read about it on the internet. And they were able to change the landing strip, jam the signal to it, and made it automatically land in Iran. So, as everybody's talked about, it's a war going on. And in the presentation, basically what I say is there's two kinds of people. The ones that have been hacked and know it, and ones that have been hacked and don't know it. There's really nobody in between. With that premise, Ironclad has really put together a way of the challenges that we have. The challenges are the state-sponsored, where these guys are able to change IP addresses every minute if they want. They own the local telephone companies in China, Russia, wherever. So it makes it hard for our guys to be able to track exactly where they are. You can get it to the country, but after that, then it's hard to go from there. Earlier, we talked about the guys that, the WannaCries, Anonymous, that feel it's their duty to liberate us from the tyranny of the government and everything else, which, sorry, it's hogwash for me, but they try to justify with what they're doing, but they're endangering our agents in the field, and they're endangering us as a government and financially. The solution, we have a brilliant scientist and team that we put together. I'm going to introduce you to them in a little bit. We've made a radical departure from the way everybody else is doing it. Our guys have really come up with how to out-brute force the brute force guys. The problem is that the state-sponsored and even private guys are able to buy a Cray computer or equivalent that's got the computing power that the chairman was talking about. And it's really, those who've gotten so cheap that's given them the balance of being able to do it. There's a building in China where you got 3,000 Chinese that show up at 7 o'clock in the morning and work till 7 at night. All they do is just hack. And they're giving them the resources to do that. Basically, the solution that our guys were able to come up with is we do about 5 different things all at the same time with data in transit. And I'm going to go through that with you. And then we've come up with a different solution for data at rest. So we've been working with a subcontractor to the NSA, CIA, and the FBI. Their software will detect anytime they get hit. And they can tell them it's from India, China, wherever. And they say they have a 100% solution on being able to do that. And the agency says they're very good at it. After we sat down and spent hours with them going through with what we have, the head technical guy looked at us our team and said, look, let me get this right. You guys don't care if somebody gets hacked because you make it to where they can't see any data. You protect us at rest and you protect us in transit. And that's basically what our team has come up with, is a way to protect that. To where even if somebody hacks, they can't see any of the information. If they can't see it, they can't use it. So one of the other issues that comes up is government standards. And if you want to come up with a new cipher or whatever, then you're going to have to go to the NSA, the DoD, or whoever and get approval to do that. Our guys came back and was able to come up with a way to work inside of AES and DDoS, and to go into that and to harden that, and to be able to use existing equipment that somebody would have. I.e. the next one, the legacy equipment, we did a demonstration to a power company on the West Coast. And they showed us what they had. They said, man, this works really good, but it's got an OS 7 chip in it, and it runs on Windows 10.0. They said the problem is, you see all those computers in that power station? And I go, yeah. You know what those computers run on? And I go, I know exactly. It's a 386 chip, and it's Windows 3.1. You're the first group that gets it, because the OS 7 chip and the Windows 10 wouldn't talk to their computers, so they couldn't use it to protect them. Our engineers designed this to work on a 386 and on Windows 3.1. Because when you're dealing with the government, big power companies, the chairman talked about SCADA systems for cities. Their computers are 20 years old. The US government, and I just want to let you guys know, he does have a champion with him. There's a congressman from San Antonio here named Will Hurd. Will Hurd knows more about cybersecurity than anybody else in Congress, and he's on the chairman's committee and helps him a lot. But in doing that, the government spent, I think, about $80 billion last year on legacy products and trying to upgrade them. And we're talking about computers that are more than 10 years old. And that's what you're dealing with. The government, as of last month, had 10,000 attacks on it in all the different agencies of the government. That was in 1 month, 10,000. So the fight that these guys are having to battle is epic in what they're having to deal with. A couple of people that I want to point out just gives us the breadth of what we have is Daniel Lerner is our Chief Technology Officer and is the real brains behind it. But what we try to do is go out in industry and go to a handful of companies to really help us come up with this radical change in what we're doing. We have Brad Jewett. He was the former CFO of BMC Software, huge software company. They sold out for $7 billion 2 years ago. We have Miguel, who's a Navy SEAL, but he was head of business development for Silent Circle, one of the first encrypted phone companies in the U.S. They ended up having 500,000 phones turned back to them because of the technology not working. We have Mark Watson. Mark Watson was the founding member of Xbox, the game company. Earlier, Jason was talking about Fitbit. Well, Fitbit, we have somebody from Fitbit. He's the co-founder of their accessories, on them trying to figure out how to protect what's going on. Because the biggest thing for them is the data. And that's the big deal with all these companies. If it's your medical records or whatever, you got a database, and how do you protect that? On the next page, we have hometown Ambassador Sid, lives here in San Antonio. We have people from Halliburton, and then Chris is ex-NSA, CIA, his backbone of the internet and the phone system, SS7 was especially in GSM. But we have Joe Bourgeois, who's the Director of Business Development for Schneider Electric Power Plants. These guys make 15,000 PLCs a month. So we're working with them on how to protect. A PLC is what controls the pumps and the motors at a nuclear plant, a power plant, and all that. So we're working on the encryption of communicating from that PLC to the motors. Used to, you would run a cable from the PLC out there. Today, you're using wireless gateways, and they're open. Or they're using a low level of encryption. Separate from that, we have Bob with Rackspace, who's in town. Rackspace has done phenomenal. We actually hired an intern last year from UTSA, and Rackspace actually has one of their guys out there in the program teaching these, we call them kids, it seems like now, but I mean they're adults going to college on getting that next generation. This summer we actually have 2 interns, 2 freshmen, one from A&M and one from a school in Dallas. Dave Staffel is the gentleman that we were talking about earlier, the Green Beret that Jeff helped out. But we have people from Silex, A10 on staff, and then Jesse is actually from Orange Group in Delta Force. But we have SEALs, Delta Force, we have guys from the CIA, NSA. So with that, I'm just going to get into the standard stuff. Standard stuff is you got a computer and I've got a computer. We're going to buy, let's just say, McAfee software. I'm going to open up a session. I'm going to send you a 10-page document. When I do that, I'm going to generate a 256-bit key. I'm going to either be doing that typically in AES or triple DES. It's going to generate this single key, and I'm going to send it to you. When that document gets there, you're going to use that key to open it up. Then you're going to be able to see it. So what happens is the man in the middle, the Chinese, whoever, will have 20 Cray computers, and they start banging on that key. Once they figure out what that key is, you can read about the Panama Papers. They got 11.5 million pages from a law firm in Panama. The president of Iceland had to resign because it showed he owned a company in Panama that was getting kickbacks from all the government contracts that he was signing off on. Weil Gottschild in New York City got hacked, and there were 6 acquisitions where the guys bought options on them before there was any news, and they were able to track it back that all 6 companies had the same law firm. They were able to track it back and find out that it was an external subcontractor that was passing the information off to some guys in Malawi, and they were buying the option. The guy that was actually doing it didn't know. He knew he wasn't doing something right, but he didn't know what he was getting paid for. So with that, I'm going to talk about 3 of the 5 things that we do in data in transit. You can think about this in hardware, software, and we hold patents on all of this. Is that now on your computer you've got a gear or a ratchet, and I've got a gear and a ratchet on mine. So what we do is we change the gears, and we can set this up, and it depends on you as the client what you want. We can do it once a week, once a day, I can do it once a second, or I can do it 100 times a second. Only at the point in time that those gears line up can a packet go across there. Separate from that, we take that 10-page document, we break it down to every 32 bytes. We put a slave key on each one of those, and then now we're generating, and the smallest master key we can generate is 4,000. We can go up to 200,000, but when I give you the numbers in a minute, you'll understand why we don't do that very often. So now we're doing those 2 things, and then we have a random generator that spits these out in ASE or triple DES, and we can even change them going down the line. So now for somebody to hack that, they're going to have to grab it, they're going to have to go through that. Now the number of bytes of keys they're going to have to go through is 1,250,000, and they're going to have to do that if you have it set up at a second or less. And again, there's a couple other things that we don't discuss in public that we're doing, but the odds of somebody grabbing that and getting it gets to be in the trillions. So that's what we hold the patents on data in transit. The next thing we have is data at rest. Now you got it sitting on your computer, and you need to protect it, because if somebody hacks in, they're going to grab it. So what our guys have been able to come up with is we have encryption rings. So imagine you're a law firm and you got 5 clients. One client's got 100,000 pages, one client's got 1,000. We could put an encryption ring around each one of those files, or we do it around the whole client, or however you want to segment it. Again, you get to set that as the end user. On top of that, on the ring, once it's around there, this would stop a Snowden effect, is nobody can download that. The only way they can download it is, again, we're going to ask you, how many people do you want to have to authenticate that before they can download it? The problem gets to be is single source keys and single source authorization. That's how on the end user, all these guys talked about the different scenarios. Somebody clicked on this, somebody gave up their password. Again, when you're using a single key or a single password or single authentication, that's how you're happening. So again, what we could do is, you could tell me, well, JD, I want 4 people to have to authenticate this before anybody can download it, or to even change it if you want that setting on there. And we can do it per file, or we can do it per client. So the next question I'm going to ask you is, do you want them to have to sign in simultaneously, numerically, or do you want to have them sign in geographically? One would have to be in Tokyo office, one would have to be in California, Texas, and New York. We can set it up. Now let's just say you got something really important. This is the Coca-Cola formula. What we can do is put 3 individual encryption rings around that file. And each one of those rings would be set up however you want it. 4 people, 2 people, 6 people to be able to get into that. And that's the crux around being able to do it. There's people that have an encrypted hard drive. EMC has that. But once you get past the encryption on the hard drive, then you got full access to everything on doing that. There's not an ability to segment it, and that's really what we give the ability to do, is to set it up, because you might have one of the groups that we're working with, they're a chemical company, and their formulas for making really hazardous stuff is on there, and they really want to protect that. Another scenario was, it was a big power company, we were able to do a demonstration to where instead of using an ID badge, we put that on a phone, and we used authentication, either an iRetina or a thumb, which hundreds of companies do that. But we send an encrypted message to the door. So it's encrypted going to the door, and one of the patents we have is called tolerance. And people are going to go, well, what does that really mean? But if you use a fob from RSA, that fob times out in a certain amount of time. If you don't get it typed in, you have to redo it. And the reason why it's set up that way is because if they did it different, they'd infringe on our patent. Our patent is set up with my phone. I generate a one-time use key that I'm going to use on that door. But somebody stops me before I get to the door, and we have a conversation. So I go to the door, it's still going to work because it hadn't timed out. It's not on a time-sensitive deal. But if somebody tried to clone it, 1 is it's encrypted, 2 is it's a one-time use key. They're not going to be able to gain access. But that wasn't the thing that really impressed them. The thing that got their attention was another power company had 2 guys go to work for them. One had an ID badge, and the other was a Pakistani that went to work in the IT department. And what he was trying to do was hack into their database and change the access that the guy had to the doors. So in this demonstration, we showed about encrypting that database to where it would take 4 people to be able to change what was in that database. So, which would stop that from happening in that scenario. This was the scenario that I was talking about with the phone that we were able to demonstrate. One of the announcements we'll be making in the next 30 days is we're teaming up with a cell phone manufacturer to where we'll be encrypting the calls. On this particular phone, there's 5 radio channels, cell, and this phone has a 400-hour talk time on it. And this is the first one that we're going out. We hired a company out of Finland, which is Nokia-based guys that are there in pursuing that. So we really look at, we're agnostic to the device and the transportation. If it's on satellite, if it's on Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, in that scenario of doing it. The congressman talked about quantum computers. To the best of our knowledge, there's about 3 of them in the U.S. right now. They don't work that good, but give them some time and they're going to start working good. And I think his concern about that is a legitimate one. And we're already starting to work on the next generation of what we're going to do to combat that as far as a brute force scenario. But with that, I know we've been here all day. We had some great speakers, Jeff. It's been a phenomenal day. I'll take a couple of questions that you guys might have. Okay, well, I appreciate y'all's time. Go ahead, Jeff.
You mentioned the SCADA systems that are outdated.
Yes,
Is there
sir.
a way to build a SCADA and put the security stuff in the SCADA? Because a lot of, you have the systems and then you try to patch on security things around that. Is that something that you looked at, or?
It is, and that's where really when we got into understanding that monitors a pump or a motor or whatever out there, and it's running off a PLC. And what we found that those systems are typically an older system, to where with some of the other authentication stuff that's out there, they just won't talk to them. So again, that's why we went to being able to put it down on a 386 chip and Windows 3.1. So we're protecting it out on the end. Because in part of that system is just sending it to a central station, like the city of Houston, all their power plant, or not power plants, but all their water distribution and pumps come into one place where they're monitoring that for the sewer and for the water. So you got that part, and we can encrypt the signal from a particular water plant to there to where they can't tap into that part. But the real thing is out where the motors are and being able to protect that, because that wireless is pretty much open. Some of the new gateways, we're working with a particular company in California. They have a little bit of using encryption on it, but the problem is that once you buy the two gateways, the key stays the same. They never change the keys. So it's a matter of time of getting that, and that's where we're working on, where we're going to be making those keys change based on what the client wants. Yeah. So anyway, anybody else? All right. Well, thank you guys for coming out and listening.